My mom looked at me across the dinner table, tilted her head and smirked. "You will never be as good as your brother." Everyone laughed like it was some harmless punchline, like I was supposed to swallow it the way I always did. My name is Alexis Carter. I'm 29. And for years I've been paying my family's bills in silence. That sentence from my mom wasn't new. It was just the first time she'd said it out loud. And underneath it sat every late-night transfer, every emergency deposit, every time I picked their needs over my own. I work with numbers for a living. Spreadsheets, reports, reconciliations, that's my home turf. I know exactly where my money goes. So when my mother could erase years of financial help with a smirk and a line about how I'd never measure up to her boy, something in me snapped. I didn't say anything that night. Not yet. I finished my food, did the dishes, drove home like always. But in the days that followed, while everyone else kept acting like Brandon was the one carrying the family, I opened my banking history and started printing. Every transfer. Every memo line. Every little favor. I put them all in a black binder. And when I finally set that stack of paper on the table in front of them, my mom went pale before she reached the bottom of the first page. If you want to know how that binder tore apart years of favoritism and flipped the golden boy story upside down, you have to see what life looked like before the receipts hit the table. Before the day my mom turned white over that binder, it was just another Sunday dinner at my parents' place in Tacoma. The kind we'd done so often it felt less like family time, and more like a scheduled obligation I was expected to keep. That afternoon I left my apartment in Seattle with my laptop bag riding shotgun. My dad always had one quick thing. He needed help with online, and a container of homemade chocolate chip cookies sliding around in the back seat, because my mom insisted mine tasted just like her mother's. Traffic on I-5 crawled, brake lights stretching into the distance. Instead of listening to the radio, I mentally scrolled through my budget. The automatic utility payments I'd set up for my parents were due that week. I just covered their phone bill a few days earlier. I told myself it was fine. I made a decent salary. I knew how to manage money. This was what being responsible looked like. By the time I pulled into their driveway, Brandon's giant SUV wasn't there. That figured. In this family, being on time was my job. I walked in with the cookies. My mom, Diane, took them, gave me a distracted kiss on the cheek and said, "Right on time. Of course you are, Lexi. You're my responsible girl." She said it like a cute inside joke. To me it felt more like a job title I'd never agreed to. My dad, Rick, sat at the dining table, reading glasses low on his nose, laptop open, a jumble of envelopes and a calculator beside him. He barely glanced up. "Hey kiddo. Remind me later, I need your help with some online stuff." He said it the way you'd ask someone to pass the salt, as if my time and brain came with the house. My Aunt Melissa was already there, folding cloth napkins into neat triangles at the end of the table, talking about a coworker at the bank who'd just been promoted. When she saw me, she smiled. "There's our girl. Always working, always busy. You must be doing so well up there in the big city." That tone older relatives use when they've decided you're fine so you don't get to have problems. For a while, everything played out like it always did. Diane moved around the kitchen narrating Brandon's latest wins, even though he wasn't there yet. She talked about a video he'd posted that got a bunch of likes, a new client he was this close to closing on a house with, how he'd shown her photos of some expensive staging and how professional it all looked. Rick chimed in with, "That boy's a real go-getter. Makes us proud." Aunt Melissa added, "He's always had that charisma. Some people just have it, you know?" Whenever my name came up, they rotated through 3 lines like that was the entire biography of me. Lexi is steady. Lexi is fine. Lexi has a good job, so we don't worry about her. Steady. Fine. Good job. As if that covered student loans, stalled dreams, and nights staring at my bank app, wondering how my account could feel this tight while everyone assumed I was doing great. I set the table, refilled water glasses, moved around the outer edge of the conversation while they hyped up my brother, who still wasn't on time to his own family dinner. At one point my mom waved her phone at Aunt Melissa, showing her one of Brandon's Instagram posts from a rooftop bar. "Look at him living life. He worked so hard. He deserves it," she said. She didn't mention the call I'd gotten a few weeks earlier. "Hey Lex, can you float me a little? Deals are slow this month." When Brandon finally strolled in, late of course, He held up a cheap bottle of red wine like it was vintage French. He kissed my mom on the cheek, clapped my dad on the back, nodded at Melissa, and gave me a half hug without looking away from his phone. Then he launched into a story about some wild open house and crazy rich buyers, maybe flying in from out of state. Everyone leaned in and laughed on cue, asking questions like he was a celebrity guest on a talk show. "That's my boy out there making things happen," my dad said, clapping his shoulder. My mom practically glowed. Aunt Melissa fussed with the napkins again like she was adjusting the lighting. I sat there listening, thinking about the text from my mom 2 days earlier. "Can you cover the phone bill just this once? And here's that Amazon order I was looking at, in case you want to help." Red heart. No one mentioned the late-night transfers that kept their internet on. Or the groceries I put on my card when my mom said prices were killing them. Between Brandon's stories, my dad joked. "Brandon's the man of the house now. We'd be lost without him." Everyone chuckled. My mom nodded proudly. "He just has a gift. Everything he touches turns into an opportunity." Then she turned toward me with that same smile that never quite reached her eyes when it was pointed my way, and delivered the sentence that had been hovering over my life for years, finally spoken out loud. "Lexi, you will never be as good as your brother." She said it like she was stating the weather. When those words left her mouth, it didn't feel random. It felt like the volume finally turned up on a reel that had been running in my head for a long time. Because moments like that don't come out of nowhere. They land on top of a pile of smaller cuts you've been pretending didn't hurt. Mine started when I was 23, fresh out of grad school. First real job as a junior analyst. 2 roommates. A lot of frozen dinners. One night my dad called, sounding more stressed than I'd ever heard him. There'd been a bad storm. The roof over the garage was leaking. The repair guy wanted a deposit they wouldn't have until the end of the month. He lowered his voice like he was embarrassed to even ask. "Lexi, could you spot us $150 just this once? We'll pay you back when things calm down." I stared at my own bank app, did the math, and said yes. That's what you do for family, right? The payback never came. The calls didn't stop. At first it was every few months. A utility bill that spiked, a medical copay, a car registration fee. Then it became routine. I set up a monthly transfer, about $250, for their power and water because my mom texted that she couldn't sleep when the bill was late. A few months later, I added $90 for their car insurance because my dad was tired of being on hold with the company. On top of that were the little things. $60 here for a Walmart pickup. $40 there for a Target run because there was a sale. Every time the tone was the same. "We just need help this month, sweetheart. We'll get back on our feet soon. You know how it is." Meanwhile, my life bent itself around their emergencies. I stayed in the cheaper apartment instead of moving into a place with in-unit laundry. I put off replacing my bald tires because I just paid their past due internet bill. My friends planned a weekend trip to California one summer. I told them I just couldn't swing it, without mentioning the $300 I'd wired to Brandon to solve a temporary cash flow issue, so he wouldn't lose a client. When Brandon wanted to sign up for some high-priced real estate coaching course he swore would change everything, my mom called me crying. "This is his big chance, Lexi. We don't want him to miss it." I covered the last $300 he needed. They thanked me like I'd grabbed a couple pizzas. Quick, casual, on to the next thing. And it wasn't just money. Most Saturdays I drove down to Tacoma to fix things they didn't want to pay a technician for. I set up online banking for my dad because he hated dealing with passwords. I untangled their internet when it went down. I synced my mom's phone to the TV so she could stream her shows. I sat at their dining table rewriting Brandon's website bio and polishing his LinkedIn so he'd look more professional. When people complimented how sharp his profile looked, he never once said, "My sister wrote it." Whenever anyone asked my parents how they were managing, they'd smile and say, "Brandon is doing so well. He's really taking care of us. That boy is such a blessing." While I stood there knowing the automatic transfer that hit their account on the first of every month had my name on it, not his. The more I gave, the more invisible I became. In their version of the story, I was the stable background character you never worry about, the one who'll always pick up the slack, while Brandon was the star, the golden boy whose charisma supposedly paid the bills, even when my actual cash was the only reason the lights stayed on. So when my mom told me, You will never be as good as your brother. I smiled tightly, swallowed the burn in my chest, and finished my dinner like it was nothing. I cleared plates. I packed leftovers. I hugged everyone goodbye. Then I drove north on I-5 in the dark, hands gripping the wheel too hard. A few miles outside Tacoma, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Can you pick up some paper towels and toilet paper this week? Also, the Netflix bill went up again. Can you cover it just until we sort things out? Love you. Red heart. I stared at the screen at a red light and felt something shift inside me. I had just been told to my face that I'd never measure up to the son who'd shown up late with a bargain bin bottle of wine, and I was still the one being asked to buy basics and cover their streaming. When I got back to my apartment in Seattle, I tossed my keys on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and went straight to my laptop. No TV, no shower, no scrolling. Just the cold light of my banking app. At first, I pulled up my transaction history just to prove to myself I wasn't imagining the last 5 years. But the muscle memory from work kicked in. I exported the past few years of transfers into a spreadsheet. I filtered by my parents' names and by the memo lines I always wrote. Utilities, car insurance, phone bill, grocery run, Brandon course, Brandon gas. Row after row filled the screen. $250 here, $90 there, $60, $40, $300, $150. Over and over. My fingers flew over the keyboard as I added it up. When the total appeared at the bottom, I just stared. $26,750. That was a car, a down payment, a retirement account with a real head start. And that was only the cleanly labeled transfers. It didn't include the cash I'd slipped into my mom's hand when she was short at the grocery store, or the times I'd quietly filled my dad's gas tank. At work, if someone tried to pretend a number like that didn't exist, we'd call it what it was: denial or manipulation. Family didn't magically make it less real. A few minutes later, an email came in from my dad. Subject line: Family Finances. He'd attached a blurry photo of a stack of bills and written, "We should all sit down Sunday and talk about how everyone can contribute on a regular basis. Bring your checkbook." No mention of what I'd already been contributing. No acknowledgement that my regular contribution had been quietly propping them up for years. I could feel my old script starting to run in my head. Just do it. It's easier than fighting. You'll catch up later. This time I didn't click away. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Receipts. I went back through my banking app, my email, my text confirmations. I saved every transfer and payment that had gone to my parents or to Brandon over the last 5 years. Screenshots, PDFs, organized by year. Took me less than an hour. This is literally what I do for a living. By the time I was done, I had a tidy document that told the story my family refused to see. The next day on my lunch break, I printed everything at the office. I hole punched the pages and slid them into a plain black binder. On the front, in block letters, I wrote one word: family. Later that week, my mom texted to remind me about Sunday dinner. Also, we need more paper towels if you can grab some. I typed back, "Sure, I'll bring what you need." What I was really thinking was, you wanted paper. You have no idea what I'm about to put on the table. Sunday came faster than I wanted. I drove down to Tacoma with a bulk case of paper towels in the trunk, and that black binder on the passenger seat like a second silent passenger. That morning my mom had sent another text. Just a small family meeting before dinner. Nothing big. Love you. Smiley face. I stared at it for a second, dropped my phone on the couch and grabbed my keys. When I walked into the house, it felt different from a normal Sunday. Less noise. Less food smell. The dining table was already cleared, except for my dad's laptop, a messy pile of envelopes, and a yellow legal pad covered in numbers. Rick looked up and gave me a tight smile. "Glad you're here, Lexi. We're going to work this out like a team," he said, gesturing to the chairs. My mom was pacing between the kitchen and the table, chewing on her thumb, a tell she only had when she was worried about money. Aunt Melissa sat at the end of the table with a mug of coffee between her hands, like she was moderating a panel. Brandon lounged back in his chair, phone in hand, flicking through notifications like nothing serious was happening. I set the case of paper towels by the pantry, put my purse on a chair, and carefully placed the black binder on the table next to the stack of bills. Nobody commented on it. My dad cleared his throat and opened his laptop. "So, your mom and I have been looking at the numbers," he began. "And it's getting tight. Inflation, gas, all that. We thought it'd be good if we all pitched in regularly. Make a plan so we're not always scrambling." My mom jumped in. "Brandon's been doing so much already with his work and everything, and we know you're in a good place too, sweetheart. So maybe you could just formalize what you're already helping with. Make it official." Aunt Melissa nodded. "Family budget meetings are smart," she said. They talked for another minute, using my name in sentences like, "Lexi has always been so dependable. We never worry with her. She understands responsibility." I let them talk. Then I put my hand on the binder and slid it into the middle of the table. "Before we talk about a plan," I said, "I need everyone to see what my plan has already been for the last 5 years. My mom frowned. "What is that, Alexis?" My dad squinted at the cover. "Did you bring work stuff, honey? This isn't that kind of meeting." I flipped the binder open to the first page. A simple summary sheet I'd made at lunch earlier in the week. Each year had its own total of dollars transferred to my parents and to Brandon. At the bottom, a grand total in bold. Diane leaned in out of reflex and started reading. Her eyes moved down the page, and the color drained from her face so fast I watched it happen. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then she gave a short, nervous laugh. "What is this supposed to be? These are just little things. You're making it look bigger than it is." My dad looked over her shoulder, then up at me. "Lexi, this doesn't mean anything. It's just family helping each other." I turned the page. March, utilities, $250 car insurance, $90 Walmart order, $62 Brandon coaching course, $300. I turned to April, May, June. The same pattern. My mom snapped the binder shut harder than necessary. "We don't need to see every little thing you've ever done," she said, her voice climbing. "And anyway, we've never asked you for that much." Something in me settled the same way it does when I present a report I know is airtight. "Not that much." I repeated. $26, $7.50. Not counting cash. Not counting gas. Not counting groceries I put on my card because you said you were saving. Brandon finally looked up from his phone. "Whoa, Lex. You've been keeping score? That's weird." "It's family." My mom seized on that. "Exactly. This is family, Alexis. You can't just throw numbers in our faces like some accountant. You will never be as good as your brother if you keep acting like this." There it was again. The line. I let it hang in the air. Then I stood up. Every nerve buzzing but my voice steady. "If I'm never going to be as good as Brandon no matter what I do," I said, "then tell him to pay the bills. Tell him to cover the power, the water, the car insurance, the phone, the streaming, the Walmart orders, the coaching courses, every bit of it. Because I'm done. I'm not sending money anymore." The room went dead quiet. My dad opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again like he'd lost his place in the script. My mom stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. "What money, Alexis? We have never received a single dollar from you." She said it slowly, as if she could will it into the truth. Aunt Melissa shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable, but kept quiet. I opened the binder again, spun it back toward them, and tapped the first page. "Every dollar is right there," I said. "Every transfer. Every note. Utilities. Insurance. Brandon gas. Brandon course. You don't get to erase it just because admitting it makes you feel bad." My mom shoved the binder away like it was hot. "You're being dramatic," she snapped. "These were gifts. You never said you expected anything back. We thought you wanted to help." My chest hurt, not from guilt this time but from anger. From finally seeing the full pattern. "I never asked you to pay me back," I said. "I asked to be respected. I asked not to be treated like a walking ATM you can insult over dinner, and then text for money on my drive home. If you want to keep saying I'll never be as good as Brandon, then from now on he can be the one you call at midnight about the power bill. He can be the one who misses trips and tires and savings, so you don't have to feel uncomfortable." My dad shook his head. "This is not how families work, Lexi. Families don't keep ledgers." I looked at him, eyes stinging, but I didn't cry. "Families also don't pretend $26,000 never happened," I said. "They don't rewrite history to make the golden boy look like the hero while the person actually paying is told she'll never measure up. I picked up the binder and held it to my chest like armor. "I'm your daughter, not your bank," I said. "I'll still come to dinner. I'll still pick up the phone. But the money stops here. If you need help, you can ask, and you can hear no. That's my boundary." I grabbed my purse. Aunt Melissa finally whispered, "Maybe we should all cool off." Behind me, my mom's voice rose. My dad called my name. Brandon muttered something about me overreacting, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in years, I drove back to Seattle without mentally planning how to fix their problems. That's when the real fallout started. I hadn't even made it all the way home before my phone started buzzing nonstop. Call after call, first my mom, then my dad, then Brandon. I let them all go to voicemail. Parked outside my apartment, I listened to the messages in order. My mom's voice was high and shaking. "Alexis, how could you embarrass us like that in front of your brother and your aunt? You made it sound like we're using you. We are your parents. We're allowed to ask for help. Call me back." 5 minutes later, another voicemail from her, angrier. "If you wanted appreciation, you could have just said something. You didn't need to make a scene and start waving papers like some lawyer. This is not a courtroom. This is family." Then my dad, sounding tired and disappointed. "Lexi, that was uncalled for. Your mom is upset. Brandon is upset. You made it sound like we're bad people. Nobody forced you to send money. You chose to. That's generosity, not a debt. Families don't keep score." Brandon's voicemail was blunt. "Seriously, Lex, what the hell? Who prints out 5 years of bank statements? That's psycho ex-girlfriend behavior. It's a couple $1,000. Get over it. You made mom cry." I deleted that one halfway through. Over the next few days, the tone shifted from outrage to gaslighting. From my mom, "I really think you're exaggerating those numbers. Couldn't have been that much. You must have added wrong. You're stressed. That's why you're seeing things this way." From my dad, an email with a spreadsheet of his own, listing a few times they bought me school clothes years ago, and a used car they'd helped me with when I was 19. He ended with, "We've done more for you than you realize. Maybe we should all be grateful and stop putting price tags on everything." Then Aunt Melissa called, asking if we could meet for coffee. I almost said no, but curiosity won. We met at a Starbucks near my office. She slid into the seat across from me with a latte, and that tight smile people wear when they're about to be honest. "Honey," she started, "I get where you're coming from. I work at a bank. I know money can be stressful, but you can't treat your parents like clients. They're just floundering a little. You're doing well. It's natural they lean on you." I stirred my coffee and let her talk. She lowered her voice. "Your mom is really hurt. She says you threw everything in her face like she's some kind of freeloader. She's crying a lot. Maybe you could apologize for the way you handled it, and then quietly keep helping until they get back on their feet. You'll make the money back. Family, you don't." Guilt flickered in my chest, familiar and automatic. Then I pictured that $26,000 total, the way my mom's face had gone white before she slammed the binder shut. "I'm not treating them like clients," I said. "I'm treating myself like a person whose work and money mean something." Melissa sighed like I was being stubborn. "Just don't let pride cost you your family," she said. I drove back to the office with my hands shaking. For a moment, I actually opened my banking app, ready to reset the automatic transfers just to make all the noise stop. Instead, I did something else. I canceled every recurring payment with my parents' names in the memo. Utilities gone. Car insurance gone. Monthly grocery top-up gone. Then I set up a new automatic transfer, for the same total amount, from my checking into a separate savings account labeled me. I opened an IRA I'd been putting off for years and scheduled a small monthly contribution. The numbers on the screen weren't huge, not yet. But for the first time in a long time, they were pointed at my future instead of patching holes in theirs. The backlash didn't stop just because the transfers did. My mom started posting vague statuses on Facebook about ungrateful children who only see dollar signs, and how some people forget who raised them. A couple of my cousins liked the posts, not knowing they were about me. Brandon posted a selfie in his SUV with the caption, "No one is coming to save you. Hustle or go home." The irony made me laugh out loud in my kitchen. At the same time, the real-world consequences of my boundaries started showing up. My dad accidentally sent me a photo of an internet shut-off notice, clearly meant for my mom, followed quickly by, "Sorry, wrong person. Ignore that." A week later, my mom called in tears because the power company had given them a final warning. In the past, that would have been my cue to log in and fix it. This time I said, "I'm sorry you're dealing with that. Have you called them to set up a payment plan?" Then I sat through the silence that followed. One night Brandon texted, "Need a quick 300 to lock down a staging company for a big listing. Promise I'll flip it back next month. Big commissions coming." I stared at the message for a minute, thumb hovering. Then I typed, "I'm not sending money anymore, remember?" He replied with 3 eye-roll emojis. "Guess the receipts changed you. Good luck when mom cuts you off." Messages like that felt like someone pressing on a bruise. There were nights I lay awake picturing their house going dark, my mom pawning jewelry, my dad taking extra side jobs and wearing himself out. Then I thought about all the nights I'd skip dinners with friends to hit their due dates, the trips I hadn't taken, the savings I didn't have. Also, they could keep pretending my brother was taking care of them. A few weeks in, I started to see signs of their adjustment. My mom mentioned she'd sold some of her old jewelry online. "Your dad said I shouldn't, but what choice do we have?" She sighed, waiting for me to volunteer a solution. I didn't. My dad picked up a weekend job doing maintenance for an apartment complex. He complained about the commute and the extra hours, but he did it. Brandon stopped posting as many flashy nights out and started sharing clips from open houses and coffee shops instead. Through a cousin, I heard he'd lost a potential client because he couldn't front staging costs, and the buyers went with another agent. Meanwhile, my life started to change in small, quiet ways. I used the money I would have wired to them to join a basic gym and a cheap yoga class. I went running after work along the waterfront instead of sitting at home refreshing my bank app in dread. I took a close friend out to dinner and for once, didn't mentally calculate what that money could have covered at my parents' house. The guilt didn't vanish. But something else grew beside it, relief. Space. The sense that I was finally stepping out of a role I'd never agreed to play. The more their anger and guilt trips bounced off my new boundary, the more I realized the real revenge wasn't the binder itself. It wasn't starving them or punishing them. It was forcing them to live without the invisible safety net they'd built out of my silence. Months passed. The screaming in my phone faded into an uneasy quiet. The long, furious voicemails disappeared first. Then the guilt-soaked texts slowed. Eventually, the notifications from my family were mostly pictures of my parents' dog in a Halloween costume or blurry sunsets from their porch with captions like, "Thought you'd like this. Love you." There was never an apology. No one said, "We were wrong to pretend your money didn't exist." But something had shifted. When I drove down to Tacoma for dinner now, the house looked a little different. Some of the nicer decorations were gone. The TV was tuned to basic cable. No premium channels humming in the background. My dad talked about his weekend maintenance job like it was just something men his age did. Nothing to be ashamed of. My mom mentioned a part-time position at the local library. Just a few shifts a week, shelving books, helping people find stuff, she said, waving it off. But I could hear pride mixed in with the strain. For the first time in my life, my mom was clocking in hours instead of my bank account. Brandon had toned down the influencer persona. He still posted, but instead of flashy dinners and expensive gear, there were walkthroughs of open houses and behind-the-scenes clips from showings. At one family dinner, he complained about picking up shifts at a coffee shop between slow real estate months. "It sucks, but whatever. Grind is grind," he said. Nobody called him man of the house that night. They talked about all of us figuring things out. When bills came up, everyone's eyes stayed carefully away from me. On my side, life got quieter in the best way. The money that used to disappear into emergency transfers started to stack up. My Little Me savings account actually grew. My IRA contributions ticked along in the background. I joined a local running group. To them, I was just Lexi, the woman training for a 10K, not Lexi, the daughter who always wires money. I updated my resume, took a certification course my company paid for, and focused on building my own future instead of solely shoring up everyone else's. One weekend, I booked that cheap California trip I told myself I couldn't afford for years. Standing on a beach I'd only ever seen in other people's photos, I realized how small my life had become when my parents' bills sat at the center of it. I still go to some Sunday dinners. I still answer when my mom calls, as long as the first words out of her mouth aren't about due dates. I set rules for myself and actually keep them. Simple ones. No opening my banking app after 9 p.m. No sending money in the middle of a conversation. If someone asks for help, I tell them I'll think about it and look at my budget later. Most of the time the answer is no. I let it be no without a long explanation. I don't hate my family. I never did. I love them. I want them to be okay. But I finally understand that loving them and funding their denial are not the same thing. My mom can believe whatever she wants about who is as good as whom. My worth doesn't live in her sentences or in a stack of unpaid bills. It lives in the life I'm building for myself, one choice at a time. I will always love my family. I will not let anyone turn that love into a bill ever again. And if you're reading this and thinking about all the times you've bailed out people who never even said thank you, maybe ask yourself the question I avoided for years. What would your life look like if you finally stopped paying for their version of the story and started investing in your own?